Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to part 3 of this 2016 Ford F-150. And unfortunately there isn't going to be a, a repair for this video, and so it's been long overdue since I've been able to put out the last part. And so the issue was that the customer wanted me to stop after doing the diagnosis and a few repairs, and then the customer, they wanted me to stop, and so they they delayed the issue for a very long time, and then at the very end they ended up going to a Ford dealership to fix the rest of the problem. And I knew before that there was an issue with the IWEs, the integrated wheel ends for the locking hubs for the 4x4. And so initially, in the very beginning, it was an intermittent problem. It wouldn't happen all the time, but when it does happen, it'll stay for some time. And it usually happens at higher speeds, like 80 or 90 kilometers or so, and up, particularly on the highway. And so when the issue does happen, it would be in two-wheel drive. And so as soon as you switch to 4x4, the noise stops. And so the issue here was that after I did all of the repairs, the problem would not happen after that. It wouldn't happen with me. Especially I road tested the truck 20 or 30 minutes or so, and I could not get the issue to happen. But as soon as I gave the truck back to the customer, he stated that it would happen almost right away, which is strange. So anyhow, I was not able to show the repair for that one, but I did know that there is an issue with the IWEs, and it turned out that sometime after, I think it was 6 months or so after, because the customer is extremely busy, so they didn't have time to come back to me. So they ended up taking the truck to the dealership to get it fixed. He told me he spent like $2,000 or something. So I really don't know on what happened. I asked him for the invoice so I could see on what they did, but he owns a business, and so he has already sent the invoice to his accountant, and so I was not able to see on what was done. But when he did come back to me for regular service, when I was changing the oil and stuff, it, it, I found a few parts underneath the truck that I could see that were replaced. So I do have a few clips or footages in which I took to show you. I'll show that in a moment. And I saw some parts replaced. The left front IWE, it looks like it's newer. So that was replaced. I don't know if they did the hub or not, because the IWE has teeth all around, and so when it engages on the back of the hub, it would clamp onto the hub. So I think the issue beforehand is that I think that one or more of the teeth were probably chipped or something, causing the rumbling noise. It would sound like it was skipping. And so when I had a look at the truck, I only saw the left front replaced. I saw the front stabilizer links done as well, and I couldn't see anything else that the dealership may have also replaced on it. I didn't see too many things. The axles and everything, they all look original, so I don't think any damage was done with that. But anyhow, I'll show you guys the clip, and then I'll bring you guys back on. This customer ended up going to the Ford dealership to get the rest of the work done, as they did not have time to come to me, and so they delayed the repairs for some time. So now I'm having a look at the vehicle just for a reference, and I can see that the IWE has been replaced on the driver's side over here, the integrated wheel end. So this side has been replaced, but I don't think the other side was, only the left front. I can also see that they got aftermarket stabilizer links done. Says Moog on them, and it has the grease fittings on top. Now if you look at the right front, I don't think this one has been replaced. It looks like it's still the original. The axles, they still seem to be okay. They still, it looks like they are the original axles still on this. And the same on this side. And stabilizer links on the other side as well. They look newer. So this truck had multiple problems, somewhat related and not related, but there was a lot of issues that could cause the noise. So unfortunately, I probably did make a couple bad calls, and I know you can't really win them all. But anyhow, it's part of the learning curve. It's a learning lesson for me, because that's that's how you learn. Sometimes you can't always be right 100% of the time. However, for some people who are familiar with this system, and particularly the dealership, and people who have dealt with this issue multiple times, because for me it's my first time dealing with this problem, and so I'm not too familiar with the system, although I did familiarize myself on how the system works and stuff. But sometimes that's not enough, because the issue is there are some noises or sounds that you may hear on vehicles that you have never heard before. So it will be a little more difficult to pinpoint on where the issue is coming from. Now, on the other side of things, I did use some like specialized equipment and tools, but it was not enough. They do have something like a wireless chassis here. I do have one. It's a Steelman chassis here. So basically, it's like a box, and with different channels, and you can hook up the receivers. So you could hook up the transmitters on the vehicle to where you think the sound is coming from, and clamp them on, and then you can go for a drive and listen to either the speakers that's built onto the receiver. It's like a rectangular box. I'll see if I can I'll see if I can put a picture up on the screen. So it's like a box, and you can listen to the speakers, or you could hook up headphones. Now this one is a little bit of an older version of the Steelman chassis here. They now have the Bluetooth version, in which I think you can use your phone or something, and you could hook up the Bluetooth onto the vehicle. It's very small and handy, so it's even easier to hook those up. But anyhow, I ended up using a specialized app on my phone. It's called the NVH or something app. I believe it stands for noise, vibration, harshness. So there is a gentleman uh, on YouTube. I forget his name, but I can probably post his channel on. I think it was him and a few other people who designed the software or the app for the Android phone. And so this app it picks up different frequencies and vibrations, and then it it won't pinpoint, but it will tell you on which system is causing the vibration, more or less, and it could pinpoint multiple systems. It's a good app. However, you should only take it with a grain of salt. So you still need to do your due diligence. But this app is really good though, because it can pick up stuff that you're not even able to hear. And so there it can pick up problems in which that you are not even aware about. And then when you go onto the vehicle and to take that that part apart, and you will see that there's an issue with it. So it's a good app, but still, I would still stay on the side of caution, because the issue with being a mechanic or technician is you can't just go and throw parts at things. You have to know on what the problem is, right? There may be some rare circumstances in which you have to warn the customer and say to start with this or start with that. In some rare cases in which you have those kind of issues, there are sometimes you have to go based on experience and put a part on it. But for the most part, you can 98-99% of the time you can diagnose vehicles and know on what the issue is. But there could be sometimes issues can be intermittent, and sometimes uh, you just don't know. You just have to go ahead and do the job, because there's no other way to figure out on what the issue is, unless something is 100% uh, obvious and the problem is there. The pickup truck is now fixed after they spent an additional $2,000 or whatever. I forgot to mention that earlier. I did talk to the customer saying that I would need further diagnosis to take a few things apart on the front end so I could see and inspect the IWEs, but he wanted me to stop from there. And so I never heard from the customer for 6 or something months. And then they just ended up going to the dealership, and he just gave the dealership his money, $2,000 or whatever it was, to fix the problem. So I told him it's not a cheap it's not a cheap job to do. Like, all of these things on pickup trucks is very expensive. It's not like all of, when when something goes wrong, don't expect it to be $100-$200 uh, repair. The parts itself are way more than that. So it's not going to be a cheap repair. And I know that the IWE system on some of these Ford vehicles is a very very bad design sometimes, because there's always repeated failures every now and then. So there are sometimes that they do last quite a long time. Other times they don't. and sometimes it could be due to the negligence uh, of the customer on how they treat their vehicle or their truck. So it could be that too. I know that they do have an IWE delete kit that you can get, in which it will stay in 4x4, I think, almost all the time. Oh, or all the time. But I don't know if that's good, but I've seen and heard some people, they did a IWE delete kit, and so it would stay in 4x4 pretty much all the time, but you will have a little bit reduced gas mileage. Also earlier, I mentioned that I found some issues in my previous diagnosis for the axles and stuff. I found that the skid plate, the front skid plate, was touching the inboard joint of the axle on where it goes into the differential, and so I had to cut out a small piece to to get rid of that. I don't know if that was causing any issues beforehand, but that was one thing that I found earlier in I don't know if I put it in part one or two, but that's what I found earlier. There's a piece I cut off here from the shield here. It was rubbing against the axle here. I don't know if you'll be able to see it from here, but there's a piece I cut off because it was hitting against here. It was rubbing against this. So I haven't drove the truck since then, but I don't think that's the issue, but it was just hitting here. So at the end of this drive shaft, there is roughness here. See how it stops? It's not smooth. It's making noise. And this way is okay, but this way it makes like a rough grinding noise here. But this is only part of the problem. I believe that you might have some issues in the front of the truck, because I feel in the steering wheel, most likely the axles. I found that the rear U-joints for the drive shaft were binding up a bit, and so somebody commented in part two about my video as to why I replaced the whole drive shaft, the aluminum drive shaft. Well, the reason is because you're not supposed to service those U joints. You're supposed to replace the whole drive shaft, because it states in service data or service information that you're not supposed to service the U joints, because more likely than not, you will damage the aluminum while you're servicing those U joints, and it could throw the drive shaft out of balance, because they are balanced from the factory or from the manufacturer. And so, in service information, Ford strictly states that you should not service the U joints. You should replace the entire drive shaft. And myself personally, I didn't replace it, only to rule out that it could have been out of balance, but also because that Ford stated that you are not supposed to service these U joints. And so that's the reason why I didn't service the U joints alone, because you're not supposed to. Although they do have some service kits available, but strictly states You should not service them and only replace them. So I just wanted to add one more thing here. I have a picture that says scrap if dropped on the aluminum drive shaft. Now, I just wanted to say a few more things that these aluminum drive shafts, although they are very strong, they are very sensitive and susceptible to being damaged. And so if for some reason that this drive shaft is dropped, it's possible that it could be thrown out of balance. Now, I'm not sure if this sticker is used for the assembly line workers and or during a shipment. So if for any reason that this drive shaft is dropped, it would need to be inspected entirely, and most likely to be put on a machine to see if it's balanced or not. I just wanted to say that usually the Ford dealership, they will just replace the entire aluminum drive shaft instead of just replacing the U joints, because it's very possible that it could be out of balance after you replace the U joints, and more likely than not, as I stated earlier, that you could nick and or damage the surfaces as you are servicing the drive shaft by putting in new U joints. Now, although that this one has the E clips or the locking clips or retainer clips, or on whatever you want to call them, for removing and installing the U joints. Now, typically these aluminum drive shafts are very sensitive. They are not like the steel drive shafts. These ones are more sensitive. The steel drive shafts and the two-piece drive shafts can be serviced without any issues as long as they are serviceable. I know on some Ford vehicles they may have U joints that are staked in place, and they are usually are not serviceable. However, there are some driveline shops and rebuilders who rebuild and do these drive shafts. Now, some drive shafts, they may not be serviceable, and even the rebuilders or driveline shops, they may not rebuild some particular drive shafts. So now this particular aluminum drive shaft, you can service them if you want, but it's not really recommended, because by the time you service it, it may need to be sent to a specialty shop or some shop that has specialized balancing equipment. And so by that time, you may have accumulated the same amount of expense as the same as buying a new one. So you probably just best to buy a new drive shaft and just put it in. I know that some people, they may agree or disagree, and that's fine, but this is all of the information and knowledge that I have accumulated. And I did say about how under service information or service data, in which Ford states to replace the drive shaft, I was trying to look up that information the other day, and I couldn't quite find it. But anyhow, it's recommended to replace the entire drive shaft if you want to avoid any issues or problems in the near future. You can service them if you want, but it's not recommended on this type of aluminum drive shaft. So I think that's it for that problem for the uh, pickup truck. I'm just going to conclude the video now, and I hope you enjoyed this one. And if you did, please don't forget to give it a like, and please consider subscribing to my channel if you're not already a subscriber. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Have a good day and take care.